Welcome all to the November meeting of Cabinet. I'm Councillor Richard Cleaver, Leader of the Council and Chairman of this committee. I also have alongside me Deputy Leader and Vice Chairman Councillor Ashley Baxter. Please do ensure your mobile phones are switched off or turned to silent mode. I've not been notified of a fire alarm practice, but should the alarm sound, can we please move swiftly to the closest exit and make our way outside to the front of this building on the green outside located on St Peter's Hill. If you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please can I request that you indicate by raising your hand. This meeting will be recorded and is also being watched as a live stream on the SKDC Public Eye website, so we are being streamed live. Please be aware of that. And we'll now begin our work to work our way through the agenda. Thank you. Welcome particularly to non-members of Cabinet who are present in the chamber today. Thank you for making the effort to come and hopefully join in. We appreciate that. First item on the agenda, apologies for absence. I believe we have apologies from Councillor Dilks. Anybody else? You're all present otherwise. Nope. Thank you, James. Second item on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting. Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of October 2023. Does anybody have anything they wish to raise in regards to the accuracy of the minutes? If not, can I have a proposer, please, that we accept the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Baker. Seconded by Councillor Rayside. All those in favour, please show. All those against, thank you. Item 3, disclosure of interests. Members of Cabinet are required to disclose any pecuniary interests which they might have on any item on the agenda this afternoon. If anyone has anything to declare, please declare it now. If not, if you remember at some point during the meeting, do declare it then. Thank you. No? Okay, thank you. Item 4 is the Swimming Pool Support Fund. Revenue, Councillor Stokes to introduce, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very pleased to present this report to you today, which relates to a successful award of funding to the Council from the Swimming Pool Support Fund in the sum of £344,659. The costs of running our much valued leisure facilities have increased significantly in the current financial year, in particular the costs associated with utilities and pool chemicals. We are not alone in facing these cost increases, and in recognition of the issues being caused nationally, the Swimming Pool Support Fund was launched by central government in March 2023. Whilst the Council's wholly owned company, Leisure SK Limited, pay for utilities and pool chemicals, it has been necessary to support the company with a management fee in the current financial year to cover these increases, which was previously unbudgeted for. I hope that you will agree that this is a fantastic news which helps to reduce the Council's financial burden. As detailed within the report, further funding applications have been made to support capital energy saving interventions at our leisure centres, which I welcome and hope will be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes. Would anybody like to speak on this item? Councillor Knowles, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Not that I wish to detract from the idea that we've got some money from the government for leisure centres, and I would second our taking them. You wouldn't expect me to go past today without noting that leisure centres that will benefit will be at Stamford and at Grantham, and the two leisure centres that still exist elsewhere at Bourne do not get any funds whatsoever. I'm not surprised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Yes. Councillor Baxter, thank you.
Yes, just to echo the good news and the bad news about this, we very much welcome the windfall, if I might call it a windfall from government, which offsets the fees the management fee for Leisure SK. As a council, we are aware of the ongoing costs of leisure, the post-COVID world that we live in, that leisure, like everything else, is suffering from inflation and the cost of living crisis and so on. We, as an administration, we're committed to leisure facilities across the whole district and work to improve them where we can. And just because we've got the £344,659 from the government doesn't mean that we won't be looking, we won't be keen to keep an eye on the other ongoing costs of Leisure SK as we do all our expenditure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Morgan, I saw you first. Thank you.
Thank you. I will declare I am a Director of Leisure SK, so I think I should mention that. A matter's just come up, and forgive me for raising it today, but it's actually a local person who's disabled, and that they have commented on the need to improve our facilities for disabled people, and I just wondered if we have got any plans specifically to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone would like to come back on that? Anyone able to answer Councillor Morgan's point?
Thank you, Leader. This issue has only been received today, as Councillor Morgan says. I think the plan is at the moment for myself and Councillor Stokes to meet with the individual so that we understand the request, and then we'll be able to provide feedback.
Thank you. Graham.
Apologies, Chairman. I should have mentioned at the outset of the item, I believe that there may be a conflict of interest with regard to directors of Leisure SK Limited in relation to their role as directors and the recommendation in the report. It would be my recommendation that any director leaves the meeting room during discussion of this item, Chairman. Obviously, it's up to the respective directors to make their own decision, but that would be my advice.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Councillor Whittington, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I was at the same meeting that Councillor Morgan was. We met with this lady. We've just had a veterans coffee morning in the Mayor's Parlour for all our veterans in the Grantham area. And this particular lady is a disabled veteran who recently took part in the Invictus Games. So yes, I mean, we spoke to her and we also introduced her to Councillor Dixon Warren, who's the Armed Forces champion, and I'm very pleased to note that the Councillor Stokes and Karen Whitfield are going to be meeting to discuss this, because she certainly highlighted that there's a bit of a gap in the provision we've got for disabled veterans and disabled people in general. So really happy for that. My actual sort of query was really about obviously this funding is welcome. It's going to fill, quite a lot of settling the 500k sort of service charge in this year's account. I'm asking this really as Chairman of the Finance Screening Committee. I mean, obviously, this is a one-off, non-recurrent item. Just some steerance, really. Do we anticipate that this 500k service charge, is it just non-recurrent in this year? Is it a recurrent item? If it is going to be occurring recurrently, what actions do we think we can take to begin to mitigate it? Because obviously, whilst in effect we've been helped out this year, the underlying problem may still be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, happily try to respond to that problem, and I definitely acknowledge that it is a problem. We had a one-off request last year, and we've got a one-off request this year, and if you get enough one-off requests, they stop, a pattern forms. So the expenditure and the demands on Leisure SK is something that we are well aware of. We are talking to the directors of Leisure SK about, or we are communicating with Leisure SK about, with a view to trying to continue to provide an excellent service of leisure facilities across the district, but at the same time taking into account the cost. Some of it, as I've already mentioned, is a post-pandemic thing, and numbers are still yet to reach pandemic the levels that we had pre-pandemic. But then there are some other particular issues within the scope of Leisure SK that are causing this issue, and they won't be recurrent. Having said that, we have a budget process coming forward. We have to produce a balanced budget. We're not intending to raid the reserves every year, and so as part of a robust budget debate over the next few months, leading up to the end of February, we will be looking with a fine-tooth comb at what Leisure SK are asking for and whether or not it represents good value for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Mr Wiles, did you wish to?
Just to help answer Councillor Whittington's point, my understanding is Leisure SK will present their proposal for the next financial year at a future Culture OSC meeting. So we expect any proposals for a management fee for next year to be presented through that. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. I would add, of course, that the fact the government is aware of the need to produce this additional funding nationally this year shows that there is recognition that there is a clear issue and a problem because of energy bills, and that hasn't gone away either. We know that although the energy prices have come down, they've come down from triple what they were roughly in 2022 to double what they were in 2022. So the problem isn't going away, and of course government having recognised it for 1 year, again, I think we would want some to be seeking some recognition of that, and to have some forward plan from government as to how they're going, what their plans are for the next financial year. And also, I would echo the fact that it is unfortunate that Sport England, the government body in question here, is not open in terms of saying why money wasn't given to Bourne, and why we can't get any feedback on that, which is unfortunate because obviously it would help us to understand, you know, how their thinking works. But there we go. Anybody else like to speak on this item? Chief Executive, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think as it detailed in the report, there's phase 1, phase 2, so we've secured phase 1. The team have been working on phase 2, which is the decarbonisation. But if anybody goes onto the Sport England Support Fund website, you'll actually see, and I've been having a look today, and I think I was as just frustrated as Councillor Knowles at why we didn't get anything for Bourne, and I wanted answers why. There's actually only 5 leisure centres out of the whole of Lincolnshire been supported through the fund. There's been no leisure centre at all for in Norwich or in Leicestershire, so we don't know. We've asked for the why, but we've not been told. But I think, you know, it's a huge success for South Kesteven to get 2 of its sites supported out of 5 for the whole of the county.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Okay, then we will move to a vote. Do I have a proposer for the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Stokes. Any seconder, please? Councillor Rayside, I saw you first. Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Any against? No, that was carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5 is the provision of domestic battery recycling service. And Councillor Baker to introduce, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to introduce a fantastic proposal put forth in a recent full council by Councillor Ben Green. The focus of this proposal is to address a concern in our district about the recycling of batteries. As members will recall, my Cabinet colleague Patsy Ellis seconded this motion, and it represents a fantastic cross-party consensus and an effort to improve recycling in our district, and I look forward to such collaboration in future. In recent years, the proliferation of battery-operated devices, from children's toys to disposable vapes, has contributed to a significant rise in the consumption of batteries. However, the safe disposal and recycling of these batteries has not necessarily kept pace with this surge in usage. As we have seen in 2023 to our cost, improperly disposed batteries do pose both environmental and health and safety hazards due to the leakage of potentially harmful chemicals, heavy metals and fires. The measures suggested in this paper put the health and safety of our operatives at the forefront of our approach. A small point where they work in all conditions. We've recently seen them working during the recent flooding, and I think it's a small price to pay, what is being suggested in this paper, to put them at the forefront of how we operate. As can be seen from the paper, we recommend implementing option D, whereby our waste operatives collect batteries from the curbside as part of routine waste collections, with residents providing their own bags. This will reduce the risk of fires, improve battery recycling rates in our districts, and I again thank Councillor Green for his timely proposal, for the cross-party efforts to enhance our district's environmental sustainability, and for all the efforts from officers in putting forward this work so quickly. I am happy to propose this to Cabinet for your consideration, and I'm well happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Would anybody else like to speak on this? Councillor Selby.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. As the Chair of the Environment Overview Scrutiny Committee, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to place on record my thanks to Councillor Green for this item that came forward. It's a good example of all parties working together and for the benefit of the community and the environment, and long may that continue. Please pass that on to your colleagues. Whilst I acknowledge, Mr. Chairman, that supermarkets do provide actually this service of recycling batteries, however, they don't do it through choice, Mr. Chairman. They do it because they sell a certain number of batteries, and then they have to provide that facility. So they don't do it out of the goodness of the, well, maybe they do it out of the goodness of the heart, but they do it because it's legislation. Yeah, this particular item, Mr. Chairman, it's about also about as Councillor Baker said, reducing the risk to our fleet vehicles, Mr. Chairman, and we'll never eliminate 100% that risk, but it's reducing that risk, so doing all we can to do that, and also providing another service as well for our residents. But thank you very much indeed to Councillor Green, and long may that goodwill continue.
Thank you, Councillor Selby. Councillor Green, thank you.
Thank you very much. As the original proposer of this bipartisan initiative, I just wanted to turn up today and convey the genuine sense of warmth and enthusiasm surrounding the proposal. It's repeatedly been said to me it feels like a no-brainer, and it's of particular benefit to many of my residents in rural communities who otherwise would be confronted with sometimes quite long drives to drop off their batteries at the relevant disposal points at the supermarkets, etc. Obviously that incurs its own CO2 price tag, so to speak, but I think if we're coming certainly to people's doors and we're swinging by and we're picking up refuse, then certainly separated batteries should be part of the consideration there. I think option D, as agreed by the Environment Committee, seems to me to be the most sensible way forward, where residents supply their own bags. I think that does deliver quite a considerable cost reduction on South Kesteven fulfilling that obligation. Yes, I think it'd be a real godsend for all residents, particularly rural residents. Fantastic to see the cross-party collaboration has been touched on by other councillors. Certainly I've got more than a few bags of batteries ready and raring to go to be collected at home. So I just wanted to ask the question of what it looks like in terms of a adoption date, all being well, after hopefully option D is adopted today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Baker, thank you.
Just to respond to Councillor Green there, the adoption date is slightly fluid. We are looking to have this in place by March. Obviously, as colleagues are well aware, we have the rollout of the twin stream recycling. Taking advice from our colleagues at the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership, it has been decided that due to the number of messages that are already going out to ensure a successful adoption of the twin stream recycling, we don't want to muddy those waters, as it were, with another initiative on top. We are working with the comms team to put together a communication strategy because, as my colleague Councillor Ellis often says, communication is king, and this will live and die on how well we communicate it. As soon as I have a firm date, Leader, I will advise all members by email.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Baker. Councillor Whittington, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, very much welcome this. Obviously, before the election, I held the waste portfolio in the Cabinet, and it was during my time holding the portfolio, when as Councillor Baker and Councillor Ellis will know, we had a fire in one of our recycling vehicles at Inglesby. I think it was last March, and actually the staff, or our refuse staff, acted exemplary manner and jettisoned the load safely. You know, this is to protect the staff. You know, these instances of waste catching fire are fairly, they don't happen very often, but when they do, potentially the consequences are quite serious. As I say, the incident in March, our staff acted fantastically well. But the reality is that, you know, if fires happen, we potentially are putting lives of our operatives at risk, and potentially a waste freighter at risk, which, you know, I think the current replacement cost is somewhere in the region of £250,000. So on that basis, a scheme with an annual value going to cost about £13,000, both in terms of health and safety for our staff and in terms of cost effectiveness, I think is to be welcomed and seen in that context. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. Councillor Morgan, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Green as well for this proposal. When the motion first came to full council and it was referred to committee, at that point I suggested that we did consider the option of using receptacles from residents to prevent us creating another load of plastic or whatever. So I'm really pleased that this has come this far. It shows that things actually do work, and you can put forward a point and it does get carried all the way through. But I just wanted to clarify a point I think we covered on the Environment Committee, and that was just that also on the back of this, that the receptacles we will get all sorts. We're going to get jars and all sorts, that they will be recycled, and we have a process in place for dealing with that.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Baker, thank you.
Just again to respond to the councillor's concerns, the in-depth procedural elements are still being worked out. Obviously, I don't want to see any bags being left on the floor, drifting across, getting into waterways. I don't want to see a big uptick in plastic pollution because of this policy. This is also why it's very important that we take the time to put a coherent comms policy and procedure in place. And as I've said with responding to Councillor Green's comments earlier on, once we have all of these dates, we have the fine details of the policy, they will be communicated to all members via email.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Would anybody else like to speak? No? In that case, can I have a proposer, please, for the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Baker. Seconder, please. Councillor Knowles, thank you. All those in favour of the recommendations as set out, thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 6 on the agenda relates to the relocation of the Customer Services Centre in Grantham. That's the SKDC Customer Service Centre here in Grantham. And I'm introducing this as the Cabinet member who has the property portfolio. So the proposal for a permanent relocation of the Customer Service Centre was identified following the closure of the St Peter's Hill offices in Grantham here, in order to complement the relocation of the main offices moved to the Picture House. In February 2023, the previous administration, Cabinet, approved the development of a new customer service hub, working alongside partner public sector service providers who unfortunately withdrew from negotiations in July this year. However, despite this setback, the ambition has remained to provide a front-facing customer service function, as it is essential that residents of South Kesteven District have the opportunity to access direct and face-to-face support with customer service staff. The current provision at Guildhall Arts Centre was never intended on a permanent basis and is not appropriate as a long-term solution due to some operating constraints and limited waiting space. Whilst face-to-face inquiries do not generate the majority of our contact, it is recognised that this method of contact is still needed The district does have vulnerable residents who need this support, and there are some activities which still do require a face-to-face discussion. A feasibility study identifying a range of alternative locations has been undertaken and has concluded that one of the vacant units located beneath our council offices at the Picture House here in Grantham is the most suitable location to relocate the customer service centre. A design team is currently working on design plans for the fit-out of a new service centre which will offer all services to be housed in one location and have on-site support from back-office teams should it be required, whilst providing a modern, open-plan office space and retaining flexibility for future service needs. The relocation will allow the current space within Guildhall to be repurposed for much-needed office space, which could be used internally or let out to generate additional income to the authority. It is also proposed that the new customer services centre can be used by other organisations. This will open up opportunities for third sector and other partners to take occupancy of space and develop themed days such as joint initiatives, including cost of living, debt support and housing advice. Therefore, the report before you is regarding taking this project to the next stage and seek Cabinet approval to progress the scheme for a new customer services centre at Unit 1, the Picture House. Cabinet is asked to 1. Approve the delivery of a new customer service centre at Unit 1, Picture House, Grantham. 2. Approve a budget of £350,000 to deliver the new customer service centre. 3. Approve an in-year budget amendment of £150,000 from the local priorities reserve towards the required capital costs. 4. Approve the movement of £200,000 from the SK House refurbishment budget in order to provide a funding contribution towards the customer service centre project. 5. Approve the commencement of the procurement process in order to appoint a contractor to undertake the fit-out works. 6. Delegate to the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the Cabinet Member for People and Communities and the Cabinet Member for Property and Public Engagement to enter into a construction contract in order to undertake the necessary works. So that is what Cabinet is asked to consider and approve today. I would add that in the time it is going to take to carry out these works, we are very conscious that we need to still offer as much and as good a service as we can within the circumstances that is both open and accessible to members of the public and a safe environment for our staff to operate in at the same time. And we will still be looking at any measures that we can put in place to make sure that that happens. I'll now ask anyone else who wishes to speak on this item to indicate, please. Councillor Whittington, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, obviously, very much aware that we potentially do need a new customer service centre because obviously the temporary arrangements that we have in place at the moment are causing the issues that you referred to. Obviously, it's a shame that we can't redevelop both of those units. As I understand the original proposal with our other public sector partner would have been a scheme that would have used both of the units. And it is obviously unfortunate that that sort of plan didn't come to fruition. Do we know what plans we've actually got for the other unit now? Because obviously now, obviously the ideal solution would have been the joint working arrangement, which obviously has fallen through. So my concern would be is what we're going to try to do to attract either a new business or a new purpose for that other unit. I'm very much aware, for instance, the Lincolnshire County Council are looking for a new day services site in the Grantham area. So there are potentially other public sector bodies out there looking for space. There may be some businesses interested or whatever. So just really interested in what the plans would be for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. I'll take Mr Wiles next to respond to the points that you made, and then Councillor Stokes, then Councillor Baxter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just for the benefit of the record, there are no issues with the current location. There are some operational constraints which are referenced in the document, but as a temporary offer to our residents, it fulfills that need. So we recognise we need to offer a different service, but in terms of the current provision, it's fit for purpose. In terms of the remaining vacant unit, if this is supported this afternoon, it's currently in the hands of our commercial agents, and it's currently being marketed very aggressively. There's not only signs on the units themselves, but there's a landing page on their website which gives full details, and expressions of interest are being sourced at the moment, and indeed we've done one recent viewing for potential third party. So that is being captured at the moment. And in terms of the other reference to any other public sector body, this is clearly cited on the One Public Estate agenda, and other parties are aware of its availability. So should there be any interest coming from other parties, then there's a route in which to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Councillor Stokes.
Thank you. I strongly believe we need to be supporting these recommendations. Item 213 in the report gives indicative timescales. First of all, the construction works 12 to 16 weeks. I appreciate the indicative. Target end of September, that actually works out to the end of August. But I would strongly ask that a review be given in terms of bringing the timescale much quicker than this, and I think we could make every effort to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the comments so far. This building wasn't originally supposed to be a council building at all. It was going to be a university. We got I think we could say we got our fingers burnt in terms of that situation, but the silver lining is that we have excellent new facilities for the council upstairs, and now, as we are proposing, downstairs. The interesting question from Councillor Whittington about the marketing of the downstairs premises. These have been on the open market since the doors to the cinema opened, before the council moved into the upstairs of that building, and initially we were looking at, the council were looking at food retail or something, I don't know if we do advertising, but some form of place to eat. But there was no useful, firm interest from any party to take those buildings on, which is a shame, because that would have brought an income into the council. And since May, we have continued to pursue that, and we did at one point. We were in negotiations with a gym firm to see whether or not we could get the downstairs of that building used as a gym. Again, we couldn't find a place to meet the requirements and the price that was expected, and so on. And so it is. If you're working for South Kesteven District Council, which is based upstairs and across the way, this is an excellent place for SKDC staff to work. And you'll have seen from paragraph 4 that we walked through many other different options before we got here. In terms of the budget, you will see that most of the budget is being moved from the SK House refurbishment budget. I've read about the SK House refurbishment budget recently in the Grantham Journal in a column put together by the opposition leader. I can say firmly that the information that was put into the Grantham Journal by the opposition leader, I don't know whether by mischief or by mistake, the comments that he made were wrong. He said that the refurbishment of SK House was a top priority for the new administration. That has never been the case. He made some other comments as well that are demonstrably wrong. And it's not the first time there have been errors, factual errors, in that column. Nevertheless, we are taking the budget that was allocated by the previous Conservative administration for the refurbishment of this building, and used it. We haven't given up on this building, but we are using most of that budget for staff, for the benefit of customers and residents of SKDC, putting that budget to a better use. I take the point that Councillor Stokes makes about why does everything in local government have to take so long? It's not just this, but the comments that we've had from our own groups have been, Why does it cost so much? And why does it have to take almost a year? So I think as a challenge to ourselves and to officers, if we can tighten that timescale by looking at running I accept that we have contract procurement rules and we have systems in place and we have to do robust tenders and so on, and that contractors need lead times. But if we can run any of those systems in parallel in order to bring about the completion of a scheme sooner than a year's time, then that would be very welcome. And if we can bring it in under budget, even better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Rayside, then Councillor Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. As the Cabinet Member for Community and People, I welcome this because customer service falls under my portfolio. So I'm really pleased and feeling quite ecstatic that this has finally come forward. They have been there too long. I've done a visit, and during that visit I've acknowledged that they are operating under restricted facilities in terms of what we can offer to the public, and that's not what we want. We want the public to be able to have access to us. So I wholeheartedly welcome this, and I do second Councillor Baxter and Councillor Stokes' comments about time frame. If we can possibly bring this in 3 months earlier, that would be very much welcomed. I think we can tighten on the time frame. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, then Mr. Wiles. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first of all, just to make a slight correction, the original purpose of this particular site, going back many years now, was actually for restaurant space linked to the cinema complex, and we've in fact done we did a full circle coming back after the university pulled out. The current space that the officers are working in, I've also visited, and it is extremely cramped. And I'd actually like to thank them for working and persevering in the current temporary arrangements. I think they've obviously put a huge amount of effort into doing that. And I also think it's really important that we improve customer access. I've seen people currently coming and basically facing shut doors because they're only working there for certain hours of the week. And clearly there is a need for more face-to-face support for our residents. The other point I'd like to make is actually focusing on the other unit. In the past, we have put in a request to SKDC to consider community use of the other space as opposed to commercial use to bring in an income. It might be that we can put the two together. I will be following up on the process required to look into that. But certainly we have an amazing history, for example, in this town, and we have the museum simply cannot possibly display a tiny part of that. 4,000 artefacts, for example, Roman, currently sitting in boxes in Lincoln. Why don't we bring those into our town? That's just one example. We also don't actually have, for a town the size of Grantham, a purpose-built community hall for those residents living in the town centre. They are totally reliant on the provision of third party, whether it's churches, whether it's a guild hall to rent space. So it would be, I think we need to consider the use of this, other uses of the available space that will be left over. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Mr. Wiles, then Councillor Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back on the comments made around the timescale, which has deliberately been set out in that way in the report, so it's clearly visible. Because I just want to manage expectations. That I sense the members' anxiety about progressing this, and we all feel that. But clearly, this is public money, and we need to ensure best value along the way, and we need to be realistic about the timescales. A lot of these activities aren't within the gift of the council. They're dependent on the market and the contractors having the availability of their subcontractors and other parts of the supply chain being ready and able to respond to this. So rest assured, we've fast-tracked as much as we possibly can along the timeline, but we need to be realistic about what's achievable in the time that's available. Members who have seen that unit will know that it's not even at first fix stage. It is literally walls. So there is a lot of work that's needed to get this operationally ready for an opening that meets the needs of what we're setting out to achieve. So I do stand by that timescale in the report. I don't think it's realistic to achieve this any quicker, but rest assured we hear the message from members and we'll do what we can, but we do need to follow due process in order to get the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Whittington.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo my support for Councillor Baxter, Councillor Rayside and Councillor Stokes, what they said. I'd also like to go on record as saying, contrary to what's been said, in my opinion, the area they're in at the minute is not fit for purpose. We're putting staff at risk in a place that I don't think they should be. That's my personal opinion on viewing it. But I welcome Mr Wiles' statement that they will look at trying to push this through faster if possible. I think that is imperative for us, that we seek out any way that we can get this done quicker. They've been there over a year and it looks like we're going to put them there for another year. So I would welcome any speed.
Thank you. Councillor Whittington.
Mr Chair, thank you for allowing me to come back. I think that the reason for my question around the second unit, I think has been brought out in debate, is the fact that if it has been empty, like the first one, for about 5 years, so to me that would indicate that potentially there is no market requirement, their market demand from a commercial entity, because if there was, they would probably have snapped it up a long time ago. Hence my question referring about other public bodies that might be interested as well. But I've just picked up on the suggestion that Councillor Morgan has made about maybe it going out for some form of community use, and suggesting a heritage type of centre as well. Because for me, it'd be far better to actually see these buildings being used rather than just lying dormant, as it were. And as I said, if there'd been any market demand, it would have been fulfilled an awful long time ago. So I think maybe looking at that kind of alternative option, alternative provision, should be something that we need to consider. In terms of the cost, I mean, I'm speaking as chairman of the Finance Committee here. I've got no issues with the cost. The cost is what it is. It's laid out in the report where it's coming from. The vast majority is coming from a budget that's already there. The SK refurbishment budget, it's just been transferred across. So from a financial point of view, I've got no concerns with that, and I accept what Mr Wiles has said regarding the length of time. It takes what it takes, but maybe in terms of the second unit, perhaps we do need to be thinking a little bit more creatively about what we could use that for, instead of, because the solution may be either an empty unit that the market doesn't want, or a unit that is actually fulfilling a purpose for the people of Grantham.
Thank you, Councillor. Your points are well made, and I think it's fair to say we are open to all suggestions going forward as to the future use of that unit. Thank you. Nobody else wishes to speak. Mrs Moses.
Thank you, Councillor Cleaver. I just wanted to pick up on the concern that Councillor Harrison raised regarding the risk assessment and the safety of the staff. I can confirm that there is a risk assessment in place, and that was produced when we moved into the current location, and that was with the support of the Health and Safety Manager and the Health and Safety team. The risk assessment has been under regular review by both the service area and the Health and Safety team, and it will continue until the move is complete, if it is approved today. The review date of the current risk assessment is for this month, and it will be undertaken by myself, the Customer Service Manager and the Health and Safety Manager. I understand that an email has been sent to members today from our Member Support Officer with 3 dates for visits to take place to the current customer service area. During those visits, if any feedback is received from members regarding health and safety, we will of course take that into consideration as part of the risk assessment review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you very much. I almost hesitate to get political, but I think to my mind there is a slight question mark as to whether this represents fair value for taxpayer money. Certainly, just looking at a Grantham Journal article here, I think there's an exercise to be embarked on in terms of PR surrounding this. I think to the layman looking on at the headline cost, we're talking about fairly significant six figures going into this. And from their point of view, they're thinking, how do you spend this possibly on a shell that already exists, on the desks, the chairs, etc.? How on earth do you amass that type of a bill? So I think as this probably does progress and it moves forward, I think everybody would benefit from greater light being cast on how exactly this money is being spent. Because as I say, I think there's almost a toxic perception out there that this looks like largesse. It doesn't add up, I think, in the public's gaze. They're thinking, how on earth do you spend this money purely and simply on office equipment? And I think from a outsider's perspective looking in, that's almost justifiable. So really it's, I think, a case of tweaking the messaging and getting that bang on as to scotch that myth, which I'm sure this administration wouldn't want to be purveying. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I think it's maybe a slight exaggeration to say there's a toxic perception of something that's only just been announced. But notwithstanding that, of course, we are very pleased that we have a open and accountable scrutiny set of procedures and in place in this council. And obviously, any scrutiny committee that's relevant to this subject is very welcome to ask for any papers that they wish to see about this project as it goes forward. Councillor Baxter, yes, thank you.
Yes, I certainly welcome the members of any political group asking for more financial scrutiny and more openness and transparency and so on. It's certainly something that I banged on about for a long time, and I'm grateful that we're in a world where the new council is across the board is looking for transparency, scrutiny and good ways of spending money. And I think one example of that in practice is the contributions that we've got from backbenchers to cabinet meetings, because previously I went to cabinets in times gone by, and I think at best my contributions were tolerated, and certainly they weren't encouraged or allowed to as a backbencher to come back again and again and again, like we tolerate, or not tolerate, like we welcome now.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Whittington, and then Councillor Rayside. Thank you.
Yeah, to come back a second time, but I'll be brief. I didn't hear the whole conversation because getting a coffee, but I understand it was around financial scrutiny. If any backbencher or anybody's got any issues around financial scrutiny or any issue they want to be looked at, as chairman of the Financial Scrutiny Committee, I'll happily speak to my vice chairman, Councillor Lee as well. Please contact us with any items that you think you would like us to scrutinise, and we'll be more than happy to. And obviously we would work with the Cabinet portfolio holder as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for reinforcing the point about the role of scrutiny. I appreciate that. Councillor Rayside, then Mr. Wiles. Thank you.
I just wanted to reiterate what Officer Claire Moses would have mentioned. I think as a council we need to be careful as in language that we use, because we have to be mindful that we are an employer and we don't want to be perceived as putting our staff at risk or have them working in unsavoury facilities or circumstances whilst serving the public. So it is key to note that we do have a risk assessment, which is a live document, which we will continuously look at, and we will take things on board, any comments that members would like to make. But it is key to note that our staff are safe and we're not putting anyone at risk whilst they're addressing issues from the public.
Thank you. Mr. Wiles, thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to prolong this item too long, but it's just to make the point that I think a reference has been made around the budget allocation. That figure's been arrived at through external cost consultants. I made the point earlier that this area is a shell, so clearly a lot of the costs aren't about fixtures and fittings. They're about bringing that space into an operational use, which of course is one of the barriers why those units are proving quite difficult to let, because any incoming tenant is going to be faced with the same challenge of the M&E and the associated cost of bringing that unit to life. So a lot of that cost is clearly associated with bringing that unit into use, not about the furniture that goes within it. I'm certainly not aware of any negative narrative or comments being made about the proposal, but clearly we may see that coming through. But clearly we can articulate how that budget has been arrived at. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I accept that. And anyone that's actually been inside the units and seen them realises just how much work there is, that you really are getting an empty shell. So there's clearly quite a lot of costs to fit them out completely from scratch. Thank you for that. Councillor Whittington.
Sorry, again, last time I went round there, literally they were just breeze blocks. I'm just wondering if any members got any concerns around the cost, how much it's going to cost. You know, if some photographs or even a visit, so people can actually look to see, you know, that as Mr. Wiles has just said, we are literally dealing with a shell. It's a totally blank canvas there.
Yeah, thank you. I see nobody else indicating to speak. I'm happy to propose this from the Chair. I have seconded Councillor Rayside. Thank you. All those in favour, please. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7 on the agenda is the housing repairs and maintenance policy. Councillor Baxter to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to present this in the absence of my friend and colleague, Councillor Phil Dilks. He would have been pleased to introduce this. It went through the scrutiny process, as is only proper, I think in July. It's tempting to start a monologue about the long and difficult history of housing repairs in SKDC. Certainly it's worth mentioning again that the regulatory notice is lifting after 3 years in special measures. That is public now, isn't it? Yeah, so I can say out loud. I can say out loud that the regulatory notice on housing has been lifted. We are no longer in special measures. However, we are still on the path towards improvement of our housing. We recognise that everything isn't yet fixed, and this is part of it. Having a repairs policy that people can look at and can understand will make it easier to explain to tenants when and why repairs are being done. Repairs that are welcome, repairs that are unwelcome. We need to access people's houses in order to make these repairs. Sometimes the repairs are the result of tenants moving on after a long time to this world or the next. Sometimes they are the result of tenants who have moved on and left the place in a state. Currently, I believe that it's the former that where we've had long-term tenancies. Some of the houses have been in a condition where people have got houses that are lived in and need modernisation. So anyway, having this repairs and maintenance policy, which is included in the agenda pack, is a welcome step forward and part of a whole suite of housing improvements that is ongoing and most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Would anybody else like to speak on this item? Councillor Morgan, then Councillor Whittington. Thank you.
Thank you. This is probably one of the most important documents before us as a local authority, providing social housing for so many people. And actually, I will say it's brilliant that SKDC does still have housing, because not all councils now do. So I think it's something we should be pat ourselves on the back for having retained. But I'd just like to, if I may, pick up in 9.3, page 57 of the report. It focuses on missed appointments. And this is clearly a very important part of the or impact on us being able to do our job, looking after tenancies. But I just want to query something, because I can see it's like contradiction within this policy. We're being told that 2 attempts will be made to make fixed appointments by contractors. but it's my understanding in practice what we're actually doing is offering ad hoc visits. So when contractors are out and about, they're actually dropping cards through doors when they have a free slot. And I just want to make sure that we take that into account, that we're not counting that as one of our 2 attempts, because in that case the tenant will not be expecting the contractor to turn up, and I have known it happen to some of my residents. So if I just can make that point. The other one is around adaptation. The other biggest issue I'm coming across is adaptations to those with disabilities, and it's not just adaptations, but the availability, especially bungalows, where what seems to be emerging is people who are disabled who are actually younger, so they've actually got families, and it's not something in the past that seems to have occurred to anyone. We might need more than 1 or 2 bedroom bungalows. So I just wondered how we're managing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Martin, you would like to come back on that? Thank you.
Yes, I can come back on both those points, thank you. So the first one, in terms of the call cards, there are a couple of different call cards. One is to let tenants know that we've been out, and it records that visit. There are some call cards, I think, used by heating contractors where they can put additional information about the next visit. We would not expect our contractors to be cold calling. That is something that I think is reflected in the policy, and we try and work with contractors so that they don't do that. We pick that up through contract meetings with them where we can. So I think ultimately that's the intention, is that our appointments are made with tenants. The fact that they have a call card means they can call back and rearrange those appointments should they wish, if that's what they need to do. So hopefully that covers that bit. In relation to the issues about families with disabilities, we have been looking at properties. We do have a few properties where we have made adaptations to family houses to accommodate families with complex needs. The latest of that is Ash Close, where we've actually just recently built an extension. We've built the downstairs accommodation. So we are trying to actively look at where we have properties that would meet needs. We are able to carry out those alterations and make those offers. The aids and adaptations policy supports that through looking at reallocation of properties where that need can be met that way.
Thank you. Councillor Whittington, then Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Very much welcome this policy. I think it's really important that we do have a policy around repairs for all of our social tenants. So we welcome this. Just want to pick up. I was going to ask this question because I've got a second one, but it's just picking up on the debate from the previous question by Councillor Morgan about call cards. And at the moment, potentially, we have quite a lot of our social tenants are quite elderly and have been in their properties for many years. And we increasingly read in the newspapers of scams, attempted scams, where people turn up at doors and whatever. And my concern is that if we have people turning up and putting cards through, unless it's probably advertised to the tenants that this is potentially might happen, a lot of these tenants may just have fears that this is some kind of scam or whatever. So I have real concerns around that, and how we can get the message out to our tenants to give them some reassurance. So that is the question I've picked up from the debate. My second question was around something that we discussed at the last Finance Screening Committee regarding the current underspends that we have in an awful lot of our repairs budgets. And one of the problems that we've actually got is attracting contractors to actually come and do the work, which is why the budgets are all underspent. Because one of the problems we've got is we are competing with contractors from the private sector who potentially can offer higher rates for jobs than we can. So I think it's great we've got a policy, but I think in order to deliver the policy, potentially we've got real issues around how we then attract the contractors being willing to do those jobs. And the numbers in the finance report that came before last Finance Screening Committee are telling a story, and the story they're telling is they're all underspent because we're behind with the work, because we can't attract the contractors. So I really do think we need to do some work as a council to resolve that problem, because we have the best policy in the world, but unless we can deliver on that, then it's just a piece of paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Some interesting points made. None of them, I think, is a criticism of the policy which is in draft form. They are. We seem to be getting questions about how the policy is being implemented, even though it's not yet actually. For a few moments, it won't actually be a policy. So we can give some credit to our housing staff for cracking on with it while the bureaucracy gets to this point. In terms of the calling cards, I understand the thing. I mean, I get all kinds of interesting invitations through my letterbox each day, and housing call cards are not one of them. I understand what you're saying about residents and householders being nervous of taking up with information that's put through the letterbox, but I don't know what we're supposed to do, because when we say, oh, we'll send an email, that's even more scammy, isn't it? And if we put it on Facebook, we say, well, not everybody's got a computer or Facebook or whatever else. What are we supposed to do? I think that putting a note through somebody's actual letterbox seems to be a reasonable part of the solution. In terms of the repairs budgets, and this isn't a new problem. This has happened year after year after year. That our aspiration for how many repairs and new houses will be done in the next year has always exceeded our actual delivery, for the reasons that you mentioned, Councillor Whittington, and for other reasons. So, as part of the budget setting process, I've suggested that, as well as a discussion of the General Fund and the HRA Fund at the Joint Budget Scrutiny Committee in January, that the Housing Committee, which is a new committee set up in May, the Housing Committee also have an agenda item particularly looking at issues around the HRA, because I think that sometimes, and it's nobody's fault, but sometimes the HRA has been a poor relation to the General Fund in terms of scrutiny. Finally, on repairs generally, you will know that the chair of the Housing Committee, Virginia Moran, for whom some of the credit for this must go, as she navigated it through her committee, she has been holding workshops on different issues for members, including homelessness. The next workshop, I understand, is to be on the issue of repairs. So if members present or members anywhere else want to come and hear more about how we deal with repairs and get feedback on particular types of problems or even particular specific problems, that would be a good place to start. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. And I would emphasise, as you were hinting, that this is a major priority for the administration to reduce the backlog of maintenance that we have on our housing stock. And, you know, we will explore all avenues to find out, to make sure that we can do that. We really will. It is important. Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this item? If not, can I have a proposer, please, for the recommendations as set out? Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I'm happy to second. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, item 8, on page 81, is the health cash plan. Councillor Rayside to introduce, please.
Thank you, Leader. As you're aware, following the instruction from previous administration, a report was presented to the Employment Committee, and this was in June 2023. On the provision of a health cash plan for our employees. Since then, additional information was presented to the Employment Committee, and an updated report was presented to them in September. At that meeting, the Employment Committee voted against the proposal and recommended that the Council does not implement the proposed health cash plan for its employees. Based on the Employment Committee's recommendation, it is my recommendation to Cabinet that it therefore does not progress the implementation of the health cash plan at this present time. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Rayside. Would anybody else like to speak on this item, please? Councillor Baxter, thank you.
Yes, I think just to echo what Councillor Rayside has said, this is a proposal that has been discussed twice by the Employment Committee, and views have been expressed in favour and against, and I think there are different philosophical perspectives to it, and there are also different practical perspectives to it, and so I think what we're saying is not this scheme at this time. That's not to say not any scheme ever. It's saying the proposal on the table is not the right one for this council at this time. Thank you. And I'd also say thank you to the Employment Committee for giving it their due consideration and pushing back on what was proposed. That's what scrutiny... I mean, employment is not a scrutiny committee, but that's what the committees are for, is to share their wisdom.
Thank you. Councillor Rayside, would you like to come back?
Thank you, Leader. I think as a Cabinet, it's important that we show that we're listening to our members and to the various committees when they present suggestions to us. And as Councillor Baxter has mentioned, it was quite a robust discussion in both committees, and I think it's been discussed in great length. I do agree this plan in its current form is not ideal, and it doesn't meet all the needs that it's supposed to, i.e. addressing staff absences and other concerns. However, I've arranged a meeting, well, I've reached out to the chairman of the Employment Committee so that we can have a meeting, so that this can be discussed in length between us, and then we can come up with a solution going forward and find something that could more address all of the concerns that we're having, and then we can put it forward to Fran to go forward from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayside. Councillor Morgan, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the Cabinet for listening to the members. I have actually been following us the whole way through and was a member of the Employment Committee. I think Councillor Baxter very aptly summed up some of the debate that took place. There were philosophical arguments. In particular, there was a concern about undermining our NHS providers, and the impacts on GPs has come up as a particular issue. But I'd just like to thank you for listening to us and for going back to the drawing board on this.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Would anybody else like to speak on this? Councillor Rayside again, thank you. Sorry,
Leader, thank you. As much as I do support the decision that we do listen to the Employment Committee, I do also think that we need to also send a message to our staff that we are thinking of their best interest as an employer.
Indeed, and I'm mindful of the fact that the trades unions who represent our staff did support the proposal as it was put forward. And obviously, in light of that, I'd certainly support and hope that we will, on the basis of the conversation that you're going to have, be able to come back at a later date with another proposal that would meet everyone's requirements. Thank you. Councillor Knowles, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd intended to speak on this, but much of what I wanted to say has already been said. So, but the one issue is to look at our process. This was the policy was started under life before last May, and a lot of work was done by the executive, by the staff, by the unions to consider this, and we should not ignore that and say, well, that was wasted in any way. It's now come to Cabinet and Employment, and it is clear that there are reservations, that's to put it mildly, about the scheme that was being proposed, both from it being achieve what it was meant to achieve, which was to reduce absences amongst the staff, or one of the reasons anyway, and whether it would do that. The proposed scheme was considered by many that it wouldn't do that, and so was flawed in that way. I tend to think that maybe somewhere here we need to look at the process, because it seems to have a flawed process that takes something like this to a certain stage, where it's been addressed with the unions and with the staff, so provides expectations, and then suddenly it disappears through an employment committee. Now, I welcome the employment committee's proceedings and their recommendations at this stage, but we must not, as you just said, we mustn't forget that we've got a process here that was started that is appropriate to look at, and that is reducing absences and providing a benefit to the staff at the same time. And we should welcome the opportunity to review that and take it forward, but also at the same time review the process of how we do that, how we take it at the various stages, so we don't get into this situation. Because there are some people who in the Employment Committee and potentially on the Cabinet who feel that schemes like this are not appropriate in the current atmosphere with National Health Service and so on and so forth, because it might take away resources from them, and there are philosophical objections to some of this. So I think we must be very careful. We must take it forward, but we must look at the process and make sure we do it in a better way, and we take into account the various views that people have about the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. All the points made are duly noted. Anybody else like to speak? If not, can I have a proposer, Councillor Rayside? Seconder, Councillor Baxter, thank you. So all those in favour of the recommendations are shown. Thank you again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Which moves us on to item 9, which is the updated climate action strategy for South Kesteven. Councillor Baker to introduce, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I am particularly pleased, given my green credentials, to present the updated climate action strategy for South Kesteven to the Cabinet, a key document to guide how we approach the climate emergency declared by SK in September 2019. Local authorities play a pivotal role in addressing climate change, with over 3/4 of UK local authorities having already declared a climate emergency. In March 2023, the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee thoroughly deliberated on the initial version of the new climate action strategy, and following this, members collectively decided to engage in a consultation exercise to gauge South Kesteven resident perspectives on the strategy. This consultation launched on the 10th of July and lasted for 4 weeks. 73% of respondents supported the commitments outlined in the draft climate action strategy. There was widespread endorsement of the 8 themes encapsulated within the strategy. Respondents provided valuable feedback on several aspects, including the need for enhanced guidance and support for South Kesteven residents in undertaking practical actions to combat climate change, the ambition level of carbon reduction targets included in the strategy, and concerns regarding the necessity of specific projects and actions for the successful implementation of carbon reduction and climate change adaptation. In response, officers have crafted an updated version of the strategy, including an executive summary which captures the core elements of the strategy. This climate action strategy represents the first phase of a 2-step process. The detailed plans for implementing specific projects aligned with each of the 8 strategy themes will be presented in the subsequent Climate Action Plan, following the approval of the fundamental principles established in the strategy today. This is by no means the end of the process, simply the end of the beginning. Finally, the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee conducted a very thorough review of the updated document on the 3rd of October 2023. I want to thank all stakeholders, officers and members for their valuable input into this vital document. The recommendation of the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee to the Cabinet is to approve the adoption of the revised Climate Action Strategy based on the extensive feedback and enhancements made during the consultation period.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Selby and then Councillor Whittington. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. I think Councillor Baker summed that up very nicely, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add my thanks to our council officers, and in particular Serena Brown, for a very, very well-written document. Serena, your efforts are very much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Selby. Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I took over in the previous administration this portfolio that Councillor Baker and Councillor Ellis has now got in February 2022. And one of the things that I saw in those initial meetings I was having was that we'd announced this our climate emergency in September 2019, and then nothing, well, very little seemed to have been done around the development of a strategy. So that became one of my sort of personal priorities, was to ask the officers to start developing a strategy. And I want to pay particular thanks to Serena Brown, our officer, who's did a fantastic job in bringing it all together. We wanted to try and get the draft document in front of the previous council, which we did in March 23. It was always predicated on the fact that we knew it had to go out to public consultation. We did want to engage with the public, and I'm delighted to see that the new administration has carried on and regarded the importance of the public consultation. And I'm really, really pleased that we've now got this revised, updated strategy coming back. I'm also really pleased from Councillor Baker's comments that we're now going to start to see some delivery plans for these eight themes coming forward, because I think that's really important. You know, it's great having a document, it's great having a strategy, but we need a delivery plan, so I'm really pleased on that. And no doubt some performance matrices will come forward as well in the future to monitor our progress. Just one final comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we've now got this new strategy at a point in time, but certainly my own personal opinion, I don't know what Councillor Baker and Councillor Ellis's view is, that this has to be a living document. It has to develop as time changes, as new challenges come along. So as a blue, who's also a bit of a green as well, I really do welcome this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. Councillor Green, then Councillor Baker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think at the outset I'll just go on the record to declare a slight interest in this, given that I do know that a colleague of mine, wholly separate to me at the Woodland Trust, did respond to the consultation. But that aside, I mean, I think we are already living with the effects of climate change right here, right now. It's not a far-off event, or the catastrophes. It's not something that we will be leaving only to future generations. At the moment, we are grappling with extreme weather events. Most notably, in the past month, we had Storm Babette, which was an event of huge significance, actually, for my residents in Isaac Newton ward. I was astonished to find, actually, that 1/8 of the total length of the River Witham actually passes through my ward, and indeed we saw quite serious flooding at North Witham, a 60-year high, and also flooding at Colsterworth. And I was interested to learn about the role that the District Council can play in facilitating the distribution of sandbags and sand. At the moment, I had some correspondence with officers about this. I gather that that's an opt-in scheme and that take-up's not always been particularly great. I'm mindful of the switch that occurred with organ donation, where we moved over to opt-out rather than opt-in. And I'd almost like to be plying my parish councils, in particular, with those assets, if we can distribute them, and then wait on them to get back to us to tell us no. I think that would certainly help at the margin with the greater frequency of these events that we can expect. And I think I lastly wanted to draw reference to the Climate Change Working Group. I'm unaware of any recent meetings of that group, but I'd be very happy to be enlightened, certainly by perhaps the chair of the Environment Committee, who we're blessed to be in the presence of today, as to when the next meeting is and what the general regularity of those groups' meetings is. But certainly, as I say, I think there's a strong role for us to play. Look forward to the delivery plans. It feels like the hard work is now going to be beginning, and particularly with reference to flooding, we in Isaac Newton Ward await the fruits of that work. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to know that Isaac Newton Ward has a councillor that recognises the gravity of the situation on climate change. And I would actually point out, of course, that emergency planning is something that we do take very seriously at SK. And I do remember writing in my all-member briefing recently about the importance of encouraging parish councils to be formally signed up and have a formal relationship with the Lincolnshire Resilience Forum. For that is something that I personally am very keen about, and I know that Councillor Dixmore and your colleague is also very interested in pursuing. And I think we've got another training course coming up that's just been announced today, haven't we, for all members here at SKDC. Anybody else like to speak on this item? Councillor Baker, sorry, yes.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to come back on both the councillors' sensible questions, really. Councillor Whittington is quite right that this does need to be the first step in a series of living documents. I wouldn't even just categorise this as the strategy being a living document. We need to be nimble. We need to respond to changes as they arise. Obviously, we try to mitigate against all known knowns. We try to mitigate against known unknowns, but there is always an unknown ready to throw a spanner into the works that we do need to respond to. We need to learn from our approaches year on year on year, because unfortunately we are starting to see the significant impacts of man-made climate change coming home to roost earlier than many scientists had even predicted. Also, that there are a number of members who have strong faith in new technologies. We obviously need to take these on board as they become financially viable and scalable. And new approaches, which might be old approaches repackaged, or there might be brand new approaches that nobody has ever done before. So I echo and support the approach that we need to stay nimble. We need to have a living approach to this document. Regarding the Climate Action Group, I was, would you believe it, in a meeting about this just this morning. We are finalising terms of reference for that group, because we want that group to be an outward-facing group. We don't want to be navel-gazing. We don't want to be debating minutiae within policy. We want to be getting out into our communities. How can SK support our town and parishes? How can it support our community groups? Members will recall that I canvassed interest on this group a number of months ago. Apologies for the time that it is taking, but we do want to make sure we get this right, because this crisis is too urgent to deal with. I hope to have updates for members on that by the end of the week.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. Sorry, there seem to be a lot of subjects today of great interest. Well, as a lifelong environmentalist and life member of the Woodland Trust, I really welcome the work that's gone into this document. It is really only the beginning. I am particularly impressed that it does also refer to biodiversity, because quite often when we talk about climate change and control, we're talking about looking more energy, and I think how this is embedded in our planning policy will be extremely important, because that's one of the biggest areas we actually have of influence. So I should be very interested to see how we move forward there. Just to give you an idea of how urgent this is, with my ward alone, we've lost over 200 trees just in the last few years, as a result mainly of planning applications and the lack of current legislation to protect those trees, when up against the pressures of new development. And even now, recently an application's come through on a site to trees that had TPOs to start cutting them back and trimming at the edges. And that's the danger. It's not always the obvious big things. It's sometimes those nibbling at the edges that we need to be putting protections and measures in, and increasing our areas of biodiversity and wildlife habitat. And I believe we can do both. We can achieve improving our carbon footprint whilst also supporting the environment upon which we all depend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Beck, you want to come back? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just want to reassure Councillor Morgan that there's a really important message within there, that without the appropriate protections in our planning systems, a lot of what we would plan or aspire to do would be undercut. Again, I was in a meeting this morning where we were discussing some of the new obligations placed on councils by the Environment Act, and I am pleased to say that our political masters in Westminster have put an obligation onto councils to consider how biodiversity is impacted in planning applications, such that the phrase biodiversity net gain is something that will need to be considered by all planners from January. This can either be net gain on the site or buying off-site credits to achieve net gain elsewhere. We are also required to provide a report into what we intend to do with our biodiversity action plan and what is already happening according to the abilities that the council already have, such as how we manage our grounds and open spaces, the parks team, how we manage our tree stock. We will then be required to report on what has actually happened in 2026. So there are changes afoot. These will be disseminated down to members, and it does seem to, despite some of the headline figures that we have had from recent political announcements at Westminster, there is still a central core of environmental protection that is, if anything, increasing, which I continue to welcome. I invite anybody who wants to talk to me about this in more detail, because today is not the forum for it, but I thought I'd add that.
Thank you. Nobody else is indicating to speak, so if you'd like to formally propose, Councillor Baker, that we adopt the policy. Seconder, please. Councillor Baxter, thank you. All those in favour of the adoption of the policy? That again is unanimous. Thank you. So, final item on the agenda today, item 10, which is to note the Cabinet Forward Plan. Just to reiterate, this is a public document. It sits in its own page on our website for members of the public to peruse. It is updated almost weekly whenever it needs to be. It's a living document, and it's a very important document because it allows members, both members of the Council and members of the public, to see exactly what is in our decision pipeline across the council. So it's to be noted. Has anybody any comment on this before we just note it? I take that as a note. I take that nobody wishes to speak. Councillor Whittington, your microphone is switched on.
Sorry, I was thinking that.
No worries. Thank you. In which case, I take the Cabinet Forward Plan as noted. Don't need to take a formal vote, do we? No. Right. Thank you for that. In which case, thank you all for attending. It's been a very useful discussion this afternoon, for which I thank you all, and wish you a safe journey home. The meeting is closed. Thank you.